Good evening. My name is Barbara Hawk, and I'm a member of the Borough of Laurel Springs 2013 Centennial Committee. Tonight I have the privilege of interviewing Betty Cheeseman. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
So could you please state your name, who you were married to, and your siblings, and whether or not you were born in Laurel Springs, and your address.
Okay, I'm Betty Cheeseman, and I live at 613 Lakeview Avenue in Laurel Springs. Married to James H. Cheeseman Jr. back in 1941. And then we moved to Laurel Springs in September of that year. So actually I haven't been a long time member. I was a Rexon, born on the Rexon farm, which borders Laurel Springs.
Right.
So then when we married, we could get an apartment in the rear of where Pat and Bob Mather lived.
Oh, man.
Right there, yeah. Because Jim's folks had moved to Laurel Springs in 1938, in September of 38. And so he was, got into the military from Laurel Springs. But we were both raised in Stratford. So that's where our childhood memories are. We just don't have memories of growing up in those early years here in Laurel Springs, but we did come to Laurel Springs for the businesses that were here.
Oh.
The stores.
Okay.
My mother always made her list every Saturday morning, and she came down to the old American store here on Atlantic Avenue and did her shopping. And then Jim's folks did the same thing. They lived in Stratford, and he would come down sometimes with his parents, and so we remember a lot of the old stores that were here.
Right.
So,
Such as?
Such as. Well, Jim tells me had told me he remembered a store which would have been, I think he said, on Broadway. Now, I don't remember a store there. I just remember the American store. And then as we moved to Laurel Springs, of course, I do remember the others that were there. The hardware store, Ben's Hardware. I don't know who ran it before that. And the shoe repair shop. And, of course, there was Denby's store. Remember that? And coming to the little old post office, which was a little bank building, they had told us originally. And, of course, Laurel Springs National Bank. Oh, I do remember later on, Schoolie, is it Schools or Schoolie's Dry Goods,
yes,
down on Stone Road?
Yes.
But then there was a baker's store right at the corner of Tomlinson and West Atlantic, so we remembered that. But originally, when the movies were here way back, there used to be a pharmacy on one side and a shoe store on the other side. I guess other people have mentioned that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I don't remember using those stores. It's possibly the pharmacy once, maybe, if my folks needed that, but they usually shopped in Haddonfield. So I wasn't too familiar with the others other than the American store until Jim and I moved to town, and that was 1941.
And then how many children did you have?
We had two.
And their names?
Their names, we named the first one after me, Elizabeth Lynn. And then we called her Betty Lynn.
Oh, okay.
Then when she went to high school, she just wanted the Betty. Now she's Liz. She is really Elizabeth, but since she married, then she is Liz. And then Sharon was our second one. And so they both went to school here in Laurel Springs. Jim and I did not. We were Stratford people, so they have good, fond memories from growing up here.
And who were your neighbors? Any neighbors when you moved into town? Well, you built your house, right?
We built, that was after Jim was finished with World War II.
Okay.
He was in the military.
About him being in the war.
Yes, because he went in 42 and got out in 46.
And what did he do in the war?
Then he was with the Army Air Corps, they called it then.
Mm-hmm.
So thankfully I could be with him the whole time.
Ah.
That was good. He had his basic training in Atlantic City because that was taken over by the Air Corps, Army Air Corps.
Oh.
So I could get either drive down, for we had a car, and see him there during basic, or I could walk from our farm home, which is right at Laurel Road, near the White Horse Pike, and I could get on a bus at the White Horse Pike and go to Atlantic City to see him during those 5 weeks. And then he went out to Scottsfield, Illinois for his radio training, there for radio operating and mechanics. Then when he graduated from that, he was sent to Arizona, Kingman Army Airfield in Arizona.
Oh.
So that was my first introduction to the Wild West. I could get he got me a hotel room, and then 3 weeks later, I got a job at the Army base, at the Air Force Base, and could work in the civilian personnel office, so we could go to work together and come home together. So it was good, yeah.
Yes.
We made out fine because very, very lovely people opened their home to us, and we could have our space there, a bedroom at first, and then they gave us the privilege of using their kitchen, and that worked out well for breakfast and then later on for dinners. So we really made out fine. And after that, when the base closed, when the war was winding down, Jim was sent, and I could go with him up to Spokane, Washington. So he was there for 6 weeks, and then we were transferred to Oklahoma City, Tinker Army Air Base in Oklahoma City. And then the final base was in Kansas, Walker Army Airfield in Kansas. So we were together the whole time. That was
nice.
good. That was good. But glad to get back.
Yes.
Glad to get back and get started. For we had purchased our blueprints for our home. We had bought the ground. During one of our furloughs, we came home from Arizona 4 different times. I said, I think we owned part of the Santa Fe Railroad. That's a long ride home. Yeah, 3 nights and 3 days on the train, sitting up, yeah. So that was tiring, but we did it for 4 times. So then on our last furlough home, we decided that we wanted that piece of ground where we are now, in between Lindsay Avenue and Maple Avenue, and from Lakeview on down to the high water mark, the stream.
Oh, okay.
It was just the town dump at the time.
It was?
It was a town dump at the time.
Oh,
and we asked, Jim had said he wanted to build his home on a piece of ground that had some woods and some water. But I'm thinking at the time, yes, but 1 car, I don't want to be out in the wilderness somewhere and you take the car and go off to work every day.
Right.
So we were taking a walk down there right before we had to leave on our furlough to go back to Arizona, and I remembered saying to him, what about this piece of ground? It's got woods, it's got water, and it has high level ground for the house. And he thought, yeah, we'll have to ask my dad to see what we have to do to purchase it. So his father was on council at that time.
On our borough council?
Yes, Dad
Okay.
Cheeseman.
And what was his?
A senior, James
senior?
H. Cheeseman,
Okay.
senior, right. So he said it has to be put up for auction, and we advertised for 2 weeks. And he said to me, you'll have to send your dad down and tell him how much you can bid, because we had to go back to the air base in Arizona.
Right.
So we didn't have any money to speak of, so we had to offer a very, very low price, but nobody bid against us.
Oh my goodness.
And so we got the whole piece of ground at that time. But we weren't ready to build until much later. That was June of 45 when we noticed the ground. We got it in September of 45.
Okay.
We couldn't start building until in, it was close to April of 46.
Okay.
We were home in January of 46, but couldn't start building until then. So, and then we could only afford to build the little garage.
Oh, is that what you did
That's
first?
an interesting thing too, because today you couldn't do that.
No.
We could do it then.
Yeah.
And we had to show them the blueprints and so forth.
Right.
We had Mr. Harold Myers come and build the little garage first,
Oh,
and
man.
built a little apartment in that.
Oh, okay.
And then it wasn't, and that was 1946. And then it was until 1948 that we decided, well, we'll try to build the first section of the main building. So we did that and moved into that in 1950. And we couldn't do the final section of the house until 1955. So we did it in sections. We were afraid to go into debt because we were Depression kids and we saw people lose their homes.
Yeah.
And you come out with that from the war with the apprehension as to, are you really going to be able to do this? So that's the way we
My
did. We had to
gosh.
wait, little by little.
And then you said that was like a dirt road? At that
It
time?
was, yeah. It was paved down Tomlinson, and it was paved from Lakeview over to, paved down Lindsay, and then paved from Lindsay over to Tomlinson, but not from Lindsay down to Maple or on to Elma until later. That's the way that was. Yeah.
And your neighbors, you can tell about the Ivans pushing their baby
Yes,
coach.
I know when Louise and another couple built it first, Kelson or Kelsey, I don't know which, and I didn't get to know them. And they didn't keep it too long, and then when they went to put it up for sale, I think Rick will probably be able to tell you, Elle and Louise did purchased it then.
Okay.
Yeah. But I understood that Dr. Mick had bought the piece of ground next to us where the Hardings live now.
Right.
And then didn't keep it and decided, I think it was Dr. Mick. And then, of course, Kathy and John Hahn built that home there first.
Okay.
Right.
And he was one of our mayors.
He was one of our mayors. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and across the street from us at that time was the big old inn.
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of ramshackle at that time. There was in 2 apartments. And a lot of people were wondering, why did you want to buy a piece of ground that had to face onto that? Because it didn't look the best at that time.
Right.
And we thought, well, it's not going to be there too long, and it wasn't there too long.
So where did Jim's father live in Laurel Springs?
They were right at the corner of West Atlantic and Lindsay, 705 West Atlantic, where Amadios live now.
Oh, okay.
Right there, from 1938, September. And then when Mother Cheeseman died and Dad Cheeseman married again and moved up into Oak Glen, they turned the house over to Alice and Charles Smith.
Okay.
Yeah. Who owned it clear on up until when Amadios bought it.
Right, yes. So how about any, your neighbors we did, and do you remember any of the mayors or?
Yeah,
Yes.
I do remember some of the names. Can't say that I remember them all. Of course, my dad and
that's fine.
father-in-law was mayor for a little while.
Oh, was he? Oh, okay.
And of course,
What year?
I'm not sure. I just
Okay.
know he was on council when we bought the ground, but
So it
he
isn't-
wasn't mayor then.
Okay.
And so I can't tell you the exact year. It would be in, I believe, the latter part of the 40s. That would have to be looked up. I don't know.
Right.
But then I do remember Jim Guy. He was a mayor for a while. Of course, Jack Hagan. John Hahn. I'm trying to think back to some of the others.
That's okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And you attend, what church do you attend?
Well, we were actually in the Stratford Methodist for many of these earlier years, for we were both born and raised in,
Right.
practically, I should
Yeah.
say. And it wasn't until the late 60s, close to 1970, that we decided we were going to move our church membership to St. Paul's. So I wasn't there in the real early years, but I do remember some of the pastors who were there before Pastor Schalk. I knew who some of them were.
Right.
Yeah, Irv Emmons, I remember him. Very nice man. And I remember Harold Russell. But I don't remember any others before that time.
And you're very active in the church?
And
Yes, St. Paul's.
we were really in our earlier years more active in the Stratford Methodist Church, but since coming to St. Paul's, we haven't been quite as active. Jim has been, he was an elder one, and
Okay.
the two of us did a youth group for a while, not the senior youth group, the teenage one,
Oh,
we
okay.
did it for a while, and Vacation Bible School
Oh,
did
good.
thing. But we really were far more active earlier in the Stratford Methodist Church.
Yeah. And aren't you still active? What do you do now? Don't you do
Oh, I'm still there, yeah, and
Yeah.
I still are a part of the Presbyterian Women,
Oh, okay.
and I'm part of one of their circles. I teach the Bible study for one of our circles. We have quite a few circles there, so I do that. And of course, I like to be there every Sunday at the early service.
And you have how many siblings?
Yes, I am one of 8, and there are 5 of us left now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there were 8 of us raised on that farm in Stratford there. But we're all up in years now, of course, but there's still 5 of us, and we live fairly close. We're all back into New Jersey now, so that's good. We can
Right.
see each other.
Yeah.
But my children have to be far away. One is out in the Midwest in Iowa right now, and the other one has been in Florida for a good many years. Ever since her marriage, she's been down there. So thankfully, I have the siblings close by.
Yes, right,
And the
yes.
others close in heart, because we hear from.
And your siblings that are still living, or?
Okay, so when they're still, I'm the oldest of them now. My
Oh,
sister
yeah,
Margaret
okay.
Clement was the oldest of all of us, and they had lived on Tomlinson Avenue.
Right.
So she's gone. My next one is Ruth, and she is in Wiley. She has a nice apartment over at Wiley Retirement Complex there. And then Evelyn still lives in Stratford. She was born in Stratford and has never lived anywhere else, so she's still there in Stratford. My brother Howard is down in Williamstown, and he's married to a girl who was living in here, Audrey Reef, Powell, Rexon. Audrey, yeah, she used to be a Stratford girl, and then she had married and lived in Laurel Springs for a while. Now, she and my brother are married, so we see them a lot. And then my brother Bob is in Cherry Hill with his wife.
And what other volunteer work stuff have you been involved in?
Brownies. I was in that for a while when you were young.
Yes, you were.
And then in PTA for like 13 years. Okay. Jim was on school board for 12 or 13 years.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
he was, yes.
That's one of the reasons why we didn't get any more involved in the church, because he was still involved in the Stratford church with several building committees and on the official board there. And then in the school board here. So in order to limit our nights out for our children, we thought it was best to.
And the school board takes a lot of time.
It took a lot of time, yes, especially around their budget time. So that was the main involvement in town.
And how about 4th of July memories?
Oh yes, we loved that because we were all, our avenue especially, and many others too, did the family floats. We liked that. Yeah, we always had a family float in on the 4th of July parade, and so did many of the others. So we enjoyed that so much. And before that time, though, living in Stratford, during our growing up years, we enjoyed the fireworks which Laurel Springs and Stratford put off together.
Yes, that's right.
They used to do that many years ago at the ball field.
Yes.
So we could gather out on our Orchard Hill up on the farm, which is where the big University of Medicine and Dentistry is now. That building sits right where our big farmhouse sits, and had sat, I should say. And so we could go out in the open country of the orchard and look and see the, shouldn't do that, look and see the fireworks.
Right.
So we knew that
and then
they did
the drum
that.
and bugle corps we used to have.
Now that I didn't see that because that would be, we would be on the hill. We didn't see that. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, I don't remember that so much, but those parades were great. And of course they went to the ball ground afterward. You know, the children had their races and so forth. Yeah, that was fun.
And of course, the area farm you remember best is yours.
Oh yes, very much so. Oh yes.
And how about, do you have any memories of Laurel Lake, because you were close to it?
Yes, I can remember. Well, we went to Kirkwood we all learned to swim at Kirkwood Lake. Still, I remember coming to Laurel Lake once many years ago. My aunt and a friend of hers brought a couple of us, and we went canoeing. I can remember that's very vague, but I do remember canoeing there. But in later years, of course, we lived, built our home where we did. Our daughter had a rowboat, and we would always go down there, and she would enjoy fishing. And my husband Jim would take her out in the rowboat, and they could go fishing, and we would feed the fish. That was one of our favorite things to do. Walk down there on an early Saturday morning or something and feed the fish at the stream. But then the ice skating, we just loved that ice skating. And of course, as soon as we moved there, I wanted to go sledding because we had sledded on our hill up in Stratford. So even though at that time it was filled with wild raspberry bushes, I could remember taking my little one, my little baby, down and holding her face so she wouldn't get scratched by the, just because I loved the sled. So then, of course, later years we opened it up to the town to come sledding.
Cheeseman's Hill.
Cheeseman's Hill, yes. So, at any rate, yes, that's, but the lake and the ice skating, that's what we loved. We could, mostly we went to Park Avenue and got on, but there were years when that froze clear on up to our corner property, and we could go down our hill and get on the ice there and skate on up.
Oh, okay.
I remember skating with George Bryson. He always win. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we always remember, especially one year, one of my sisters, who is now gone, she and her husband had just come home from the Philippines. They had been missionaries over there for a while. She was now pregnant with one of her babies, and yet she was a good ice skater. So she put on her skates, even though that baby was going to be due in a couple of weeks. And George Bryson didn't realize that, and he said, he would take each one of us by turn, you know. Then he said, "Oh, I never skated with a baby lady before." We got such, I never forgot that.
No,
He was so fun.
Something. Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Because he kept so much of our history.
Oh, he did. He was wonderful. So, of course, we got to know Jen and George Bryson. They were such wonderful people.
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, we enjoyed them so much.
That's good. How about any favorite town memory?
Oh, well, I can't think offhand. Of course, our children love to go out at Halloween, you know that, and participate in things like that. Those are memories that we had when we were young in Stratford, so of course they wanted to do them in our town here where they were raised. I can't think of anything that comes to my mind right now. Maybe you can help me with some of those.
No, yeah, like I said, you talked about the hotels and
yeah.
And do you know of anybody else that we could interview that, you know, from World War II or anything?
Let's see, offhand, you probably have talked to most of the people that went in from our town here. So in order, I can't think of anybody else to tell you right now that you probably haven't interviewed already. You've talked to.
We've talked to a lot.
To a lot of them, I'm sure. Right.
But then sometimes everybody remembers something that we don't know.
Well,
about,
that could be too. I do remember when the old inn was there. Of course, there were apartments in it, but there was a lady named Martha Thornley. I don't know whether anybody has spoken about her. She lived just a block down. She lives where Pam Lorenzi lives now.
Oh, okay.
Now, I didn't know her really well, but I do know she had friends, and I knew Evelyn Wilson and Bob, her son, Bob. I didn't know Mr. Wilson, but I did know Evelyn and her son, Bob.
So and Martha Thornley, huh?
Yeah.
I never heard of her, yes.
Yeah.
And did she, she had lived there for a while?
Yes, dear knows how many years before.
Right.
Because she was, and incidentally, one of the couples in that old inn was, I'll have to come up with his name later.
Half-Raisin?
No, it was an old man.
Couple.
Yeah, an old couple. The man that had built my in-laws' place up at West Atlantic and Lindsay, where the Amatos live now, and that's where my folks had bought in '38. Condon, Mr. and Mrs. Condon had an apartment in the inn. We felt so bad for them because they had built that nice home, fairly new, and then couldn't afford to go ahead and keep it and had to sell it. Then I always felt so bad for them. He seemed so lonely.
Yes, yes, right.
Yeah. So, and the lady that lived across from the inn, in the Lakeview Inn, I think they call it.
Yes.
At the corner, okay. Helen Newberry, we did know her.
Oh, okay.
And she had an Aunt Helen.
Oh.
The two of the ladies lived there together.
I never heard of them either.
Oh, didn't you?
No.
Helen Newberry and her aunt, Aunt Helen, she called her. Well, Helen Newberry, I believe, worked for the unemployment service in Camden. But she had her dogs and she enjoyed walking them. She was kind of a lonely lady after her aunt died. And she died with a heart attack right there in the house. But yeah. So. And up the street, at the corner of Poplar and Lindsay, we knew the Houchins and the Laymans.
Oh, okay.
And I guess people have mentioned them.
Yes.
Yeah. So, of course, we knew who Fred and Charlie Houchin were, and Edith. I didn't know Charlie's wife as much, but I did get to know Edith. And Jim knew them before I did. His father and mother had been friendly with the Laymans.
Oh, okay.
So Jim knew the Edith and Fred's daughters. No, wait a minute. Get that straight. Layman's daughters, I guess. Layman's daughters was Edith Layman Houchin and her sister Virginia.
Oh,
Now, I don't know whether anybody else had mentioned them. They go way back. I think they used to live on Park Avenue before they bought that house. I'm telling you this because Jim knew these memories before I did. I mean, his folks knew people from Laurel Springs.
Right.
I think his dad Cheeseman, used to play golf. I know he played golf. I think he played tennis with some of these people down here in Laurel Springs.
Oh, okay.
Long before I would have known Jim, even. Yeah, that goes back. Yeah. So the other, as far as neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Pittman used to live where Bryson lives now. We knew them. Yeah, Mr. I don't know whether you've interviewed him.
Hap.
Yes,
Yes, I have.
So maybe he would have told you that, or he may not have known it. But Jim's dad got to know these men by riding the train.
Oh, okay.
When he would go into work.
Oh, so he took the train from Laurel Springs to...
Jim's dad did.
Jim's dad did. Oh,
Yes,
okay.
he did. Jim had to do that too during the, I guess it was right after, I know it was for a year before he went into the service, for we were here in town before he went into the military.
Okay.
So because of rationing, they had to ride the train, and I can remember that's what he did. The cars only had an A. If you didn't have to use it for your business, you would only have an A sticker for gas rationing.
Oh, an A sticker.
An A sticker, I think
my
that's what it
goodness.
was, and that didn't allow you too much.
Oh,
You had to
okay.
be careful about how you used it if you wanted
Yes.
to get around. So the rationing, of course, people have talked about that. I do remember the rationing cards for many things during the war years.
Okay.
think-
What was that?
For
What else
it was for lots of things, for meats and for butter, for sugar, for certain things, not for everything, but for those certain things that everybody, every child would have had one. Their parents would have had the number of cards for their family.
Oh, man.
Shopped that way.
Oh.
Yeah, we made out all right with that. Didn't have any problem with that.
No.
So.
I think we kind of went more with the flow.
Yes, yes, we
You just
did.
did what was, you know, you had
With
to do.
what you had to
Yes.
do.
Yes. Mhm.
Right. I don't know whether I mentioned all the stores in town that I knew. Oh, later on, of course, O'Terry,
Oh, yes,
Laurel Market.
Laurel Market, yeah. Mhm.
And then there was Joe's Market. They were sort of in competition with each other.
Right.
And I mentioned the hardware store. And Artie's, of course, Artie Norman's card shop.
Right.
And whatever else he had there. Newspapers, and things like that. And Baker's. Denby's. I remember when Bill met Mary Denby.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
there he worked for them
Oh.
at the store.
The
yeah,
store. Is
at
that
the
how they
store.
met?
That's how they met. Yeah.
Oh.
I remember that he worked in there. Nice people. Such nice people. Yeah.
Oh, yes, lovely.
Yeah, I always enjoyed both of them, and of course their parents too. What else do I have written down here? Maybe you have some other things.
I don't have anything else, yeah. Vinny, you did very well,
Okay.
yes.
Let's see. Oh, some of the people you asked if I knew from church. That would be the Presbyterian church?
Yes,
Yeah,
right, yeah.
okay. Oh, yes. Of course, I mentioned George and Jen Bryson.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jen's mother and her sister, little sister Molly. And then Rosa and Og Muller.
Oh, okay.
Remember them?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Jim and Doris Guy, we knew them. Doc and Matey Mick. Elizabeth and Ed Steinecker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he's probably been mentioned. Ruth Descamps, I remember her. And
Right.
the Alexanders. And Sam and Joan Myers and Joan's mother, Grace McCracken.
Oh, right.
When the
Mhm.
McCrackens were here in town. And Jim and Betty Taylor, they were related to the McCrackens.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I remember when they built their home, which is on Elma Avenue. Okay, I guess that's... Later on, there were... Gene Wetherell, he lived in town here.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I remember who he was. And there was a very lovely couple moved into Stratford, but came to the Presbyterian Church. Mr. and Mrs. Wyanmeyer. I don't know whether anybody had mentioned them. A lot of younger people in town would remember them if they were people that went to St. Paul's.
Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful people, yeah. So I think maybe we've covered quite a bit.
Yes, we have. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Barbara.
It was great to have you.
It's so
Hope
nice
you
to see
enjoyed
you.
it, yes.
Yes, thank you. You made it easy.
Thank you. Okay, thank